Water leaks, property tax bill that skyrocketed on me, and fees that nobody warned me about. This was my experience when buying my first house here in San Antonio, and I really don't want that to happen to you. So today, I'm going to break down everything that a lot of realtors here in San Antonio don't always tell you about, and a lot of things that you really need to know before you move here to San Antonio. I've been selling homes in San Antonio for years now, sold hundreds of homes to folks just like you. So let's dive in and get into some of the nitty-gritty details of the things you need to be paying attention to. So when I bought my first house here, it was right out of college. My wife and I just got married, and we were really excited about our first home. We were working with a family friend as an agent, and we bought this great brand new home. Super excited about it. It was really affordable, so we thought. And it was great. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. So the first 6 months of being in that house, we had 3 water leaks, and the first major one was actually in the foundation. So it was where the water was coming up into the house, and this was a post-tension cable slab. And so just so happened that water line was right next to a cable. So the only way to fix it was to cut out a chunk of the foundation, which means pulling out that post-tension cable and having to reinstall it, get it re-engineered. It was a huge mess. I was working in commercial construction at the time as a project manager, so it was like I was managing my own project on my house while doing my other job. It was not fun to deal with. What might have been able to remedy that in the first place, and probably not, because I don't think an inspector would have caught it, was whenever we bought that house, our agent didn't tell us we needed an inspection. Like it was a brand new house. We were like, oh, we're fine. We don't need an inspection on a brand new house. It's good. That was a terrible, terrible idea. I do not recommend that at all, and we'll talk about that later on in this video. But that was a big thing. The other thing was the mud tax. Okay, our neighborhood was in a great brand new neighborhood, but it had a municipal utility district. Another thing we're going to talk about in detail. On top of that, the HOA fees that we were paying, we knew they were pretty high, and we didn't realize at the time that what we were getting is we got a gated neighborhood, but what we were paying for those amenities that we were supposed to have, we wouldn't have for years. And actually, we ended up selling that house after only 2.5 years to be able to move closer where my wife was working across town. And we never got to see those amenities, even though we paid for those things for 2.5 years. So it was a little bit of a bummer on that part too. All of these things led into me deciding that I could be a real estate agent. Okay, this is all things that I kind of thought about. I was like, man, I feel like I could guide people better than this, and I feel like I should have been told these things. And again, no, I won't blame my agent completely. I should have been more educated myself, but as a young kid, I feel like I should have been given a little bit more advice and guidance on what direction I needed to go. So now let's break down some of these things. Let's talk about that mud tax first. So mud tax is municipal utility district. So you have on average about 2.3 to 2.4% property taxes in the city limits of San Antonio. And when you get outside of the city limits, that's where things start to get a little bit better, because in some areas, such as Boulevardy and Bernie, you can get as low as 1.5% property taxes, some places even like 1.3%. But if you get in a neighborhood that has a municipal utility district or a water control district, WCID or PID, any of those things, you're going to be adding on to your property tax rate. So a lot of times it's an extra full percentage point. So you can go from a 1.5% seems really, really great to 2.3 to 2.6% in some cases, depending on which neighborhood that you're in. So it makes a massive difference in what you're paying for that home. And it really turns off a lot of people, especially if you're looking at resale. A lot of people will not touch neighborhoods with property taxes that high because of that mud. Okay. And it is a big negative when it comes to resale, in my opinion, from what I've seen. Second thing is that the HOAs are everywhere around here. Okay. So in San Antonio, 71% of homes are in a homeowners association neighborhood. And compare that to the national average of 40%, it's significantly higher, almost double, in fact. Some of them are pretty minimal as far as what the restrictions they have. A lot of them, if you're in more rural areas, will still let you do things like have livestock and all that kind of stuff. But each neighborhood is very different. But then you get to the neighborhoods that have the crazy amenities. We're talking the Esperanzas, Veramendis, Mayfairs, and like those types of big communities that have amenity centers with gyms and lifestyle directors. You've got lazy rivers, you've got playgrounds and parks and fishing ponds and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And those HOA dues pay for the maintenance of all those things. And so, of course, it does drive up the prices. So you can get, for those ones that really don't do anything, as low as, I'd say like $300 a year, on up to, $1,000 a year on most cases, with some of the big, more extreme ones being more like $1,200 to $1,500 a year. So it's just things that you have to pay attention to with those. And there are a couple of those that also have the MUDs on top of it. So you may have like okay, $1,500 a year HOA fee, and then you've got a 2.6% property tax bill. So your fees and cost of having that house outside of your principal and interest mortgage payment go up quite a bit. Now, when we're talking about the weather, there's a variety of different things, and your probably first thought is the heat. Well, that's not what we're going to talk about right now. That's later on. But cedar fever is a very, very real thing. So when you get these cold fronts that come through in like December and January, and you've got these beautiful hills all over Texas, right? All over San Antonio, on the north side of San Antonio. You drive through, it's just gorgeous greenery all year round. You get these big, beautiful live oak trees and all these mountain cedars. Well, those mountain cedars can be straight up deadly in some cases, okay? And that is from the pollen that they release, okay? So as you watch some of these videos, especially whenever they're blooming, you can actually see it's almost like a dust cloud coming out of the trees. That's how much pollen they're releasing, and it gets people pretty bad. Now we're going to pause real quick. I want to introduce myself. My name is Michael McCall. I run the Life and SATX Home Group here in San Antonio. We're a small group of dedicated real estate agents that are really focused in on relocation clients just like you, and helping you move here to San Antonio and being completely educated on everything that you need to know. So if you're looking at moving here, whether it's 2 days, 2 years, call, text, or email us anytime, days, nights, or weekends. All our information is down in the description below. There's even a Calendly link where you can click that link, schedule a call directly with us. It'll be myself or one of the agents on our team that will talk with you guys and really walk you through everything you need to know. All these things that you see in these videos, those are the things that we're going to make sure that we're focusing on dialing in for your personal situation. So reach out to us again, and we would love to be that resource for you guys. Now, number 4, let's talk about foundation issues. So these things are, no joke, okay? So you can really come into a major problem on a house. A lot of these houses will have foundation work that's already been done. A lot of them will not. Some of the major signs that you're going to see are separating walls, floors, tiles, cracking, exterior brick cracking straight down the bricks in a lot of cases. A lot of times what you're going to see is the soil around the foundation has started to separate from the foundation itself. And there's just a lot of very big red flags that can be subtle in nature if you're not paying attention to the grand scheme of things. Some of them are very obvious. You walk into a house, it feels like it's slanted to one side. But a lot of the problems are more minor in nature, and they can be covered too. They can be patched. And so if you're not paying attention to that, a home seller can go in and fix the cosmetic result of the bigger problem and not actually have fixed the bigger problem itself. Now, all these things are supposed to be on the seller's disclosure, but that doesn't mean that they always put everything that they need to put on there. Number 5 is kind of a combined one because they kind of go hand in hand together. It's the hail storms that come through here and homeowners insurance. And the reason we combine these is because homeowners insurance here is not exactly the cheapest. Okay, it depends on what area of town you're in, especially if you're up on that north side where there is a lot more of these hailstorms that come through. Your homeowners insurance can be significantly higher. Now, these hailstorms come through every year. We get these big kind of flare up thunderstorms that it can have these big hail issues within them. And in fact, these actually do make Texas and as a whole one of the most expensive states for homeowners insurance because of these types of storms. Because if you think about it, you get a hailstorm that comes through and knocks your house out. I mean, you got a new roof that you need to get pretty quick. There's roofers everywhere around San Antonio, and that insurance bill goes up quite a bit. And there's a lot of restrictions when it comes to roofs. So make sure that you're talking to your insurance person to see what the exact restrictions are for their policy, to make sure that there's some situations where roofs that are older than a certain amount of years won't be covered under your homeowner's insurance. So you really need to talk to your insurance person up front to make sure okay, do I need to be looking at these newer homes with only newer roofs to make sure that it can be covered, or make sure you're budgeting for replacing that roof out of pocket if it absolutely had to happen. The next one is kind of related to weather, but not directly, but this is talking about flood zones and poor drainage in certain areas. Okay, so in San Antonio, a lot of people call me and are asking talking about, wanting to make sure they are out of a flood zone. And it's not necessarily the immediate high risk flood zones that are the biggest problems. Sure, you're going to be, if you're right on the river, right on a creek, you're going to be in that flood zone, and that's something you're going to need to get flood insurance and really pay attention to those flood sirens in the storms and everything, because we can get some major, like these hailstorms, major pop-up storms that cause a lot of rain in a very short period of time. And that's where the flooding occurs, because all that water doesn't have time to drain away. It all just piles up very quickly, and then bam, flash flood, just kind of rushing through. Back in 2025, in summer of 2025, there was a major storm that came through and actually caused some deaths in San Antonio because of flooding that came through, flash flooding that came through very quickly. And it was kind of out of nowhere, and it flooded the roads and swept away a bunch of cars and caused a lot of deaths because of that. And that was a major, major catastrophe. So you have to pay attention on the roads more so than your houses for the flooding, because the flooding itself, most of the houses that are built, unless they're older houses, are not built in the flood zones, especially the newer ones. Newer subdivision builders do not build their homes in flood zones. But since 1978, so we're talking the last 50 years essentially, Bexar County has only had 2,200 flood insurance claims within the county itself. So, if you take that out to, a wider area, especially looking at how many homes are in Bexar County over that 50-year span, it's very, very few issues have occurred when it comes to homes being flooded. It's the roadways that I personally have the biggest concerns with. You can be in a situation too where, you may be in a more rural area and your only way in and out of that neighborhood is through a low water crossing. And if it's flooding, you may be stuck there for a day or two until that water recedes. A lot of time it recedes quicker than that, but in these big floods that come through and it rains for a day or two straight, it may be flooded that entire period of time, and you're not able to get out of there for necessary things, groceries, medical attention, whatever it may be. Big thing is always check the FEMA flood zone map. Make sure that you plug in the address that you're looking at and see kind of where the flood zones are around that, to make sure you really understand what is going on in that area that you're looking at buying. Next thing, as with anything, if you have a lot of growth in an area like San Antonio that does, infrastructure can be lagging behind. And this is everything from roadways, electrical, water, drainage, okay? All these types of things can be lagging behind with the growth. And in fact, after last year's event that happened with the flooding in the city is putting in a little over $43 million towards drainage upgrades and kind of making sure that these things are more planned for ahead of time, and making sure that these are not issues that are going to occur again. A lot of the other infrastructure improvements, it depends on which areas you're looking at. New Braunfels itself has really crazy traffic in certain areas because the roads get so congested, and there's a lot of roadway improvement that needs to happen. There is a lot happening in San Antonio as far as improvements, especially on 1604 and some of the major intersections such as at 35 and I-10. Those areas in particular have always been really bad, and they're doing a lot of improvements that should be coming along pretty quickly. I mean, we're about halfway through probably some of those. So we're looking at a year or two out still for those to be completed. So dealing with construction a lot of times, it's a big major headache, but that goes with any big city. And if you are not new to Texas, you know that if you're driving on the highways, especially on I-35, there's a good chance it is under construction all the time. It is a full-time job for those people that are working on that interstate. And that does lead into traffic. So when we're talking about traffic, San Antonio spreads over 500 square miles, which makes this one of the largest, most sprawling big cities in the country. And it makes driving, you drive a long distance to get places. And although as a population, San Antonio is, I think, number 6 now, whenever it comes to the most populated cities in the United States, we rank only at 25 as far as the areas with the worst traffic. So compared to the population, we're not nearly as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. And that Loop 1604 expansion is expected to wrap up relatively soon, like I said, and is expanding it from what it was before at 4 lanes to now 10 lanes wide. And so it's making it a massively easier commute on top of, an area that was pretty bad in some situations, but never got too crazy like you see in some of these places like Austin, Houston, or Dallas. One thing you need to know about Texas is that we are a very dry state, especially down here in South Texas. You get further south outside of San Antonio, and it looks like a desert in a lot of places. Very sandy, lots of cactus, mesquite trees, those kind of things. That's what South Texas is. But unfortunately, it just expands it to the entire region. So currently, we are in a pretty heavy drought. In fact, back in May of 2025, which it's not this bad anymore, we got to our first Stage 5 water restrictions. So San Antonio is served by the Edwards Aquifer. It is controlled by the San Antonio Water System of SAWS, and that is who kind of maintains and makes sure that the aquifer health is what it needs to be, and gives out those watering restrictions for a lot of people that looking at watering their lawns. A lot of times you drive around, especially when you in these heavy water restrictions like a stage 5 or stage 4. We're not at stage 5 anymore, but it keeps you from being able to water anything. No outside watering whatsoever. So making your yard, nice, lush and green like you do kind of in these more northern areas or out east, Georgia's, Florida's, those types of places, it's not as easy around here because you have to spend a lot on a water bill, or, just hope for a quick period of rain to green things up a little bit. It's not as simple as it is in those areas that do get a lot more rain and are just more wet year round than we are here. So if you're looking at kind of having a nicer yard with a lot of green grass, it's going to be more prevalent for you to have a smaller area of green grass and maybe do a lot more xeriscaping and more native desert landscaping type of situation, xeriscaping, just to make it to where it's a little bit easier to maintain. You don't have to worry about those water restrictions affecting the way your yard looks. Now, of course, Texas is a very hot place. There's no question about that. I think everybody knows that. And so when you're looking at your new house, a lot of people, especially looking at these newer homes, they're looking at these houses that are maybe a little bit smaller and they're on smaller lots. So to make a bigger house, they're going 2 stories, big, beautiful 2-story ceilings, big fireplace, lots of windows. People don't think about is the AC bills with those, okay? Especially with the new homes, you can't go get a history from the homeowners of what the AC bill was or the electric bill was. And so outside of being able to do that, you're just kind of guessing. But those AC bills in the summer with those 2-story homes can get very, very high, especially if you have multiple units. They're really working overtime. If it's an older 2-story home, it's even worse because the insulation in those things are not nearly as efficient as these newer homes. It's going to make things very, very, very expensive on those monthly electric bills. Now, this is all relative. I know of a lot of people that pay a lot more than this on a monthly basis, but I mean, you can get upwards. It's been depending on how cold you want to keep that house. If it's an older home, I mean, $300, $400, $500 a month is not unheard of by any means. It just kind of depends what area you're in. Each, utility provider has different rates. And of course the house itself, how energy efficient it actually is, and whether or not you have kids like I do that are leaving the door open all the time and, letting all that cold air out. So it does make things different, with each different, lifestyle decision. Next item is that new construction is not bulletproof. Okay. A lot of people get a new home thinking that it's not going to have the issues that an old home will have. And maybe that's true at first because they do have the warranties. A lot of these builders, especially these lower quality builders that try not to talk about on this channel, really, their customer service is very poor. They will try to get out of everything that they can. Even when they're selling a home, you get your inspection done and you get issues, they're going to fight you on doing those things because they have their standards they build to. They don't care about whether or not it's up to, national code or, what most people would generally expect as a construction standard. They have their own standards that they work off of. So you get, some varying things, but you get to the better quality builders. They take care of you. They do what they're supposed to do. They fix the inspection items. Those are the ones that I like to work with. Okay. These are the ones that take care of their customers. And that's what I ultimately care about most. You also do have issues with these homes. Okay. You may move into that home. You may have gotten an inspection, inspect everything. You may have had in the best case scenario, you can get into that home while it's still in frame stage and get a frame stage inspection to really look at everything within the walls of the home as well. That's going to make sure you get a lot of these major issues rectified beforehand. But things happen. You cannot change, the fact that when you move into the house, there may be a water pipe fitting that is just barely there and it's working good while they're under construction. They've done all their tests, it's worked, and it just bust a little leak real quick. There's those things you just don't know about, but those warranties are there for you for those reasons. But it's something that you still have to expect it to happen and kind of plan for that. Make sure you're getting your inspection at the 11th month. That first year, you get kind of that doorknob to doorknob warranty. Basically everything inside the house is covered for the most part. And so get that inspection at the 11th month to see if there's any bigger issues that have popped up since you bought the house and got that initial inspection. I always recommend getting both. It's well worth it, in my opinion, to spend that $500 or so on the inspection, and it really makes a big difference. Now, this last one is one of the I definitely don't hear very many people talking about at all, and it's not one that I even mention a whole lot because it's just not something that people really think about. But a lot of people come to San Antonio for the tourism, right? It's a very big tourist first community. You go downtown, you go Riverwalk, you go to the Alamo, you go to San Antonio Mission, San Antonio Spurs games, Diesta, San Antonio Rodeo, all those things. People want to be really close to those things. They want to be close to the Riverwalk. They want to be close to the Pearl. But those areas are not really residential cores. That's one of the reasons that San Antonio is so sprawled out, on top of the fact that we have these military bases kind of in a variety of different locations throughout town, and kind of has made a lot of growth around those, which are, wider spread. But because of the way that San Antonio has grown out instead of up, there is not really a good urban core in San Antonio for residential living. There are options, but it is much more limited, especially whenever it comes to new construction. You don't see new condos. You don't see a whole lot of new builds in the intertown area. Very, kind of small pockets of places where they've got old lots or old buildings that they end up tearing down and building new stuff on. But most of the residential communities are on the outer parts of town. So it's kind of spreading on the outskirts of towns where most people tend to look. Stone Oak, I think far west side, Alamo Ranch area. You think Lotus, think about Bernie, Church, Cibolo. All those areas are kind of the main places that a lot of people end up gravitating towards when they're moving here. So think about that as you're looking at different areas. Those are kind of your main residential areas versus if you're more in downtown, there's not as much down there. There is definitely some, but there's definitely not as much as you get into those outer suburb areas. Bottom line, there's a lot of things to consider whenever you're looking at moving to San Antonio. My favorite thing to always talk about is the affordability. We're 8.6% below the national average as far as cost of living, and the housing affordability is next level. We are by far the most affordable metro in the entire state of Texas. But making sure you're making an informed decision whenever you're moving here is of vital importance. So make sure you reach out to us. Again, we are the Life and SATX Home Group. We would love to work with you guys on finding your next home here in San Antonio. All our information is down in the description below. Again, call, text, email us anytime, days, nights, or weekends, whether you're looking at moving here in 2 days, 2 years. We want to help you plan that move to San Antonio. And if you are planning that move and you want to look at some of the biggest headaches that homeowners typically have whenever they move here and are looking at buying a house here, take a look at this video right here. It'll outline just about everything you need to know. And until the next one, guys, we'll see you there.